In Africa, over the last 4 years, persistent conflict and unrest in South Sudan has resulted in high levels of displacement and forced more than 1 million refugees to flee into neighboring Uganda, making Uganda the biggest host country on this continent. But Uganda says it's struggling to keep up with the influx, as Leon Ssenyange reports.
Uganda has offered a place of safety to more than 1 million refugees fleeing the conflict in South Sudan since July of last year. Overall, the refugee population in Uganda increased by 44% last year, making it one of the fastest growing refugee crises in the world. More than 85% of the refugees that come into the country are women and children. And while Uganda has been praised for its open door policy, where it provides food, medical care, education and also land to refugees, it still struggles to accommodate the ever-increasing number. Uganda also hosts large refugee populations from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda and Burundi. The UN Refugee Agency says it received just about 21% of the $674 million needed for South Sudanese refugees in Uganda last year. Fraud in aid operations has also hampered efforts, with donors suspending funds as well. And with the South Sudanese conflict still ongoing, the refugees are likely to keep coming. Leon Ssenyange, SABC News, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, today, South Sudanese rebel leader Riek Machar arrived in Ethiopia for a meeting with the President Salva Kiir as part of talks to try and end that war. Joining us from our Pretoria studio now is researcher and PhD candidate from the University of Pretoria, Emmaculate Liaga. She has worked in South Sudan and has first-hand experience on what refugees in that region are in fact facing. Immaculate, thank you for being with us. Let's start with a quick history. So, South Sudan became a new country, and it seemed almost immediately plunged into war, basically a conflict between the two top leaders there.
In 2011, when South Sudan seceded from Sudan, there was hopes of having a very independent country, peaceful country. But very quickly, just 3 years down the line, they deteriorated into a conflict, which is affecting a lot of people, not only within South Sudan, but also around the countries which surround South Sudan. So, as you're talking about the refugee crisis, the conflict within South Sudan is actually also playing out in other countries as well.
All right, let's start with your own experience. You visited, what did you see?
Within Juba is relatively calm, is relatively not as chaotic as other parts of the country, but that's not to say Juba is not dangerous at all. There has been targeted killings with just random people who come and shoot targeted individuals, and those unnamed gunmen are not actually known, and they're believed to either be from the government or from the opposition. In Juba is relatively a government-controlled area, so there's not a lot of back and forth in Juba, but in other provinces, in other counties, there's a lot of conflict, and that's where the IDPs are running from and coming towards Juba. Just a year or a few months ago, down south of South Sudan itself, there wasn't a lot of conflict. It was mostly on the northern part of South Sudan, but the last few months has seen conflict moving down to the south. So this has actually pushed more refugees towards Uganda, Congo and also Kenya. But apart from moving outside of South Sudan, the IDPs have also settled in Juba because it's one of the relatively calm areas. So that was my observation, and a lot of people are actually very restless, and they're very eager for the government and for the opposition, political elites to actually come to an agreement.
And try and give us a sense of what it's like to be a civilian caught up in this war between government and the rebels. We know that the violence has had a massive impact on women and children. How bad is it?
It's actually escalating for the moment. Women and children are used as weapons. So in order to effect as much pain in the opposition tribe which you are trying to actually attack, you attack their women, women are raped, kids are abducted, especially in the eastern region of South Sudan. The southern region has faced a lot of women who are raped as a weapon, as a way to actually subdue them, and men in that sense are killed as well. So there's a lot of kids are afraid to walk around, go to school, take part in the daily activities because they're afraid of being killed. There was actually a story in the UNHCR website where they were explaining where a bunch of students were just going to school and they were attacked, and the girls were raped and the boys were taken as child soldiers. So it's actually very dangerous. Just a normal civilian can just be attacked like that, and you don't know where this, what to do and who to run to, because the attackers might be from the government, from the IO, and from other malicious groups which are growing up as well.
It's horrific. So then what does, say, a woman face? She wants to avoid violence against her own person. She wants to protect her children and maybe flee to Uganda. How difficult is that?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
What sort of journey is it if you'd like to flee to Uganda, say? What do the refugees face in attempting to flee?
Well, South Sudan is a newly independent country, and when it was part of Sudan, it was a very undeveloped region. So once it got independent, it didn't get time to actually develop roads or develop any formal travel systems. So refugees actually come from northern parts and they walk all the way through the forest and through rivers, actually also dangerous places. So the journey is not good at all. It actually is part of the conflict too. So if you won't be attacked at your own home, you face the same dangers going to seek refuge in other countries. And once you arrive in the country, you don't know if you'll be accepted or not. So refugees' plight is actually very, very difficult, and it's a good thing that there's a day that's set aside to recognize the plight they go through.
It really is difficult. How is Uganda doing as a host nation, overwhelmed with people seeking asylum? Is it being compassionate?
Uganda is actually being very, very receptive. So is other countries around South Sudan. It's taken more than 1.2 refugees, and this number keeps on growing. But Uganda is actually facing the pressures of having a lot of refugees walking per day, which is around 2,000 refugees per day. 1.2 is almost very, very close to double the population of Pretoria. So economically, socially, they are feeling the pressure, but also Uganda has their own internal domestic issues to deal with. So as Ugandans, there is a split of attention, while as refugees, there's not enough attention to them. So it's actually a very difficult situation for Uganda, but fortunately, they're also being supported by a lot of organizations such as the UNHCR, but as we know, financially, it's being very difficult for both Uganda and international organizations which are willing to help Uganda host these refugees.
Well, let's hope that the talks in Ethiopia at least bring those leaders together as we look to a possible end to the conflict in South Sudan, one of the worst producers of refugees. So many people displaced from that conflict. Thank you for your insight, Emmaculate Liaga, a researcher at the University of Pretoria. Well, today